So our next presenter is Chris Teague. Chris is part of the CSD's or Cottonseed Distributors Extension and Development team. That team in recent years has been doing a lot of work collating a lot of information from a lot of crops to try and benchmark what our crops should look like when they grow, and they're trying to turn this in, or they are turning this into online tools that are going to be valuable for us going forward. So thank you, Chris.
Cheers, Dave. I'm not sure if I've got my learned colleague Bob Ford in the cloud or not, but either way we'll push on. So we're going to present some online resources.
Switch.
How's that?
Better.
Yeah. So just to go through some online resources.
Yep. Hold on. Yep.
Is it turned on?
There we go. Excellent. So just a review of the tools that we're doing, and I guess we're asking those what-if questions, and what if we could accurately assess our yield potential throughout the season, which will support our crop management decision. And similarly to some of the work that Paul touched on as well, was what can we do to improve our insight into the genetic, environmental, biomanagement influences to maximise our management by variety, by target yield, and specifically to a regional level is where we're trying to focus a lot of this work. So today I'm just going to run through a number of the tools, and the key one there is Barry, which is a collaborative work with CSIRO. Touch on Cotton Tracker, which is something we're trying to introduce and to get some feedback from the CCA. And then have a quick look at some online tools and a bit of feedback if there is any. So just touching on Barry itself. So Barry is a model, and I'll touch shortly on how we've come about that. We call it Barry because the actual terminology is biometric agronomy for realising representative yield. So that's quite a mouthful. So hence Barry is the short name. And it is a crop model. The model itself has come back through a collaborative project with CSIRO through the G by E by N project. And I'm happy to say we've actually just recently been approved to do a level 2 of this project. So there's going to be some more work ongoing. G by E by M, everyone would be well aware of it. G being the genetics, so that's the seed, that's the variety. Its yield potential is in the bag, regardless of whether it's in Hillston or in the north. That is set will be the environment and the management that dictates the ultimate yield. So to give you a little bit of background on how Barry came about, the team at CSIRO actually used the data set from the Ambassador Network and our variety trial program. Out of that, there was in excess of 270 variables which needed to be refined. We had 3 varieties, 5 seasons of data went into this, with the 6th coming through shortly, 2 cultivation types and 4 snapshots. And the ultimate aim of this project was to be able to predict a potential yield at various stages throughout the cropping cycle. I can by no means go through the level of information that was required to use the machine learning that is running in the background of Barry. But effectively, the first stage, and my simplistic view, is far short of the complexity that was involved to create this information. We've used a random forest model through those 270 odd variables to tease out, rank and prioritise influences upon yield. This table is just an example of what we've used to refine that process. In the early stages, this was ran at first flower, and the model was trained with 85% of the data. 15% of that information was used to test the model, which provided a yield prediction. The yield prediction from that early work at first flower provided a R-squared value of 0.7. So we're quite excited by that. Stage 2 of the modelling utilised an XGBoost, which I'm told is an optimised version of random forest. And I'm not even going to try and explain how it's done. But a lot of work has been done, and a lot of that's been driven by Lauren Stevens and Chris Watkins. So it's certainly a credit to them for the work they managed to do. But effectively, teased out a whole lot of information from there, came up with a correlation heat matrix. We were able to actually define what's influencing yield and to be able to tease that information out and refine it to the point where we have some inputs which we'll demonstrate with Barry. On the right of the screen here, I've just got this, this graph here. On the y-axis is a predicted value, and on the x-axis is an observed and a one-to-one line through the middle. So there's quite a good little group of the data set there. So indicating that early work we were heading in the right direction in terms of predicting yield at an end of season establishment here. So I'll show that shortly. So this is what Barry will look like. Barry is currently on a staging server, so in the early stages of being online, which will be available to CSD members. The function itself relies on those four key things of cultivation type, a region, the three varieties, and some snapshots. And I'll just walk you through those now. So we've been in the field for the day, we've come in, we've got some information, we want to sort of run that through the model just to get an estimation on yield. We can select our cultivation type, be it irrigated or dryland. We've got our region. This is currently broken down into a southern, central and northern. Next stage of the G by E by M project, we hope to work on some isoline information to get it tightened up on that, to get that regional perspective involved. Our treatments, currently three, the core varieties of the Bulgar 3 suite. And we'll have some snapshots, which range from a first flower, a cutout, an end of season, and a flowering progression.
Chris, does it take into account row spacing, like 30-inch, 60-inch?
That's work that we are working on. Yeah, so this is, a lot of this is correlated at this point in time to 1 metre. And the reason for that is because that's the majority of the data set. But that's ongoing. The technology hasn't allowed us to run this in a live format today. For some reason through Zoom, we had a little bit of trouble. But fundamentally, this is the interface that you'll be presented with when you're opening Barry. This is for a first flower snapshot. At the top of the screen there, we've got a seed imbibation date, so the date that the seed was wet. And then we've got a first edition retention, plant type, north, nodes of first rooting branch, squaring nodes, and day degrees of first flower. And the reason those currently exist is because that is the information that the random forest model determined as having the most influence upon yield. Now everyone will be sitting there going, well, first flower, there is no yield. So basically what the model is doing is suggesting that based on the architecture of this crop, this is the yield potential. Obviously what happens throughout the season from here on, but effectively at this point in time, suggesting that we're sitting about 12.9 bales based on these crop metrics. Interesting to know with Paul's work this morning, I would suggest if we had the live version running, we could probably slide that first edition retention slider back and forth. I should point out too, these are sliders. These can be used on an iPad, iPhone, on a laptop. These sliders, and I suspect if we move that slider with retention back and forth, this figure at this point in time, first flower, is unlikely to change. So the seed imbibation date here was the 15th of October. What if we were to push in the 1st of December with the same crop metrics? The model suggesting already that we're, obviously going to be having we've planted later, based on season length and the information within the model. Our yield potential at this point in time is likely to be less. Makes sense. So we've progressed through the season now. This is a flowering progression. So it is far more simple. It relies on a boll count and day degrees in point of time. The chart down the bottom here on the x-axis, on the y-axis, sorry, is bolls per metre, day degrees on the x-axis. You can see the actual data points that have contributed to this data set, and the black line being an ideal line. So in this case, we're coming from the field with 106 volts per metre. The day degrees input, and it's just suggesting based on this information that you're a little bit low below ideal. There may be very good reasons for that. There may be a shedding event. There may be a stress irrigation. There'd be reasons you would understand why that's the case. What if we were to tighten up on that, bring an irrigation forward, tighten up on some insect control? A little bit later on down the season, we might do another evaluation and see that we've picked up our count, and our condition has improved. Just giving us a little bit of understanding by utilising the model based on our visualisation of what's happening in the field, that we're on track and heading in the right direction. In the end of season one, this is done. I'll skip the cutout one just in terms of timeliness, but the principles are the same. We select through these sliders what we're observing in the field. Modelling at the moment, we're looking at days of flowering, total rainfall, and the number of days above 40 degrees are contributing to this variability, so that's why they exist. One thing you may notice, the second slider is an overall bowl weight, which is linked bowl weight in grams. Our intention will be with time to actually make that a little bit more user-friendly in the field, because obviously we can make that assumption, we can do it even better post-harvest, but we'll actually have that as an overall bowl weight for seed cotton. So you can at least grab a couple hundred bowls out in the field and just tighten up on your estimations. So these were done in retrospect this year, I will admit. These are two ambassador sites from the McIntyre. This one is to the east. The one on the right is from Bogabilla. And we have utilised these, so we'll use the first flower snapshot, some flower progressions, cutout snapshot, and end of season. The graph on the left-hand side, the y-axis being bowls per metre. There's other variables, as you've seen, that contribute to the model, but I've just in green overlaid the actual bowl count during the time, and in the black line and the notes above them are the actual yield estimate based on Barry. So at first flower, Barry suggested 11.8 bales. As we progress through, you'll be well aware through this late February, early March period, we had some overcast, rainy weather. We did see our bowl count decline. Accordingly, we did see the yield estimate decline as well. Ultimately, at the end of the season, Barry predicted 10.1 bales, reaching 9.85. Similarly, on the table on the right, at first flower, 12.4, we did see those similar rain events through February, March, so we did see that dip in the yield prediction by a bale. End of season assessment was 12.9, and we harvested 12.62. So far we're encouraged with the way Barry is performing. This year's data will go into Barry. This machine learning is data hungry, and in fairness, the last 5 years of data, we probably haven't seen too many rainfall events as significant of what we've seen, so we're hoping that this information will help improve the model yet again. There's two examples of how Barry's performed this year, and we're hoping to get that online and available prior to flowering for the main season of planting. Just want to acknowledge those that have contributed to the creation of Barry and the network information that's gone into it. So the Ambassador Network and Variety Trial Cooperators, the CSD Extension team, our multimedia guy Taryn has been really good at getting this online, and will advise industry when Barry is online, and certainly to the team at CSIRO. Without their help, this information just wouldn't be possible to put together. So I'm just going to change tack now.
You want questions on Barry or?
Oh, yeah. Are there questions on Barry?
I've got a
Question about Barry. All of the yield predictions seem to be plus or minus 1 bale. Is that just default at the moment, or is that?
That is a default, and that was just devised in terms of the model itself. Without being too specific and tightening up on it, we just agreed that plus or minus 1 bale, but that will be removed as we refine the model.
No other questions on Barry so far before he goes on to the cotton tracker?
Chris, I see you did mention that, or you have there that it might be available for rain drying cotton.
Yes, sorry, I should be more specific. So the model will also runs dryland as well. So those same snapshots apply to dryland. And in retrospect, it'd be interesting for us to go back a season or so. I guess where we see the value in that is obviously yield estimation, but in terms of a dryland industry support program where we have claims. I mean, not only are we out in the field trying to determine what a yield is, maybe we can run that information through Barry to tighten up on your gut feel on where that crop is, you know, is that crop worth taking to harvest or not. But yes, there is a dryland component. That dryland component too, I believe, from memory, does have a row configuration aspect to it, because the data set allows for it. The Cotton Tracker, it's a beta version, and I guess we're presenting it today to the CCA just to get some feedback. It's a tool that we will be able to use internally, and I'll touch very briefly towards the end of the discussion on our data grid calculator that's available on the CSD website. It is an improved version. It's fast, it's quick. You can use it on your mobile phones, from any mobile device. So if you haven't checked it out, by all means do it. But Cotton Tracker, we're actually intending to incorporate information or crop metrics from the field, and also to aggregate some climate data as well. So it's going to be very flexible, and I'll walk you through some screenshots. I think one of the real keys will be the actual automatic climate summary that it does. So it's going to be collating data grid information, climate information as you go. So if anyone in the room is used to sitting down going through some data grid calculations, we anticipate the Cotton Tracker will do that on the fly. Data will be securely stored, accessible on any device with an internet connection. And the real thing is, from today, we'd really love to get some feedback. This is based on some information that we're working on and what we'd like to see as an E&D team to help make our life easier. But ultimately, this is pitched at industry, so please tell us what you would like to see. So I'm just going to roll through the basic schematics. This is still being developed, but effectively to set up a field and a property in Cotton Tracker, here's a demo here. So this is a property, quite easy just to go around and set a boundary. Set a region and a bomb station. So the bomb station is important for drawing that data grid and climate information. So it's like any data grid calculator, whether it be the old Codesys that you'd be aware of, or any new information, it'll all refer to a bomb station. Within that property, create a field. And now we start getting to the point where we start populating our tracker. So our property and our field's created. We insert our variety, our cultivation type, our dry land, semi-irrigated or irrigated, our row configuration, and our seeding live date. Once that's populated, and I know the screens are starting to get busy, but effectively the blue add data module tab is the important one. So when we talk about flexibility, these are pre-existing trackers here, but you'll notice establishment, mid-square, and a range of modules. You might choose to do one establishment, you might choose to do 5 establishment counts, 1 first flag. Basically, the flexibility there is to populate as few or as many as those you choose. 2 screens here, so this is actually an output now. So the one on the left is from a flowering progression. We have an assessment date. At the very least, an assessment date will allow your flowering assessment to, first layers here. This is a flowering progression. But if it was a flowering assessment, you'd see the same information at this point in time. You put your assessment date in and populate any of these that you choose, be it north, total nodes, volts per metre, basically, and then these will change based upon feedback, but they're the inputs that currently exist. On the right hand side, there's one there for defoliation, same process. And then effectively, once that's populated, we get a report. So this is the report itself. So top of the screen there is just showing basic information regarding farm, field, etc. We do have the STEP estimate here. STEP is a tool online that estimates the date of first flower. We populated the actual date of first flower. You notice there's 5 to 6 days difference in there. This is climate driven. It's not actually a data grid calculation STEP estimate. It's a new algorithm that's come about from the Ambassador Network program itself, and quite a novel tool in its own right. But I mean, I can tell from this field, I know because it was one of mine, that the actual the first few fruiting positions were missing. So the actual first flower across the field was actually on the second or third fruiting branch. So I was happy with that estimate. Moving on from there, you can see down the bottom here, this is the actual table of information that has been included from the cotton tracker, reasonably well populated, fill in as little as more information as you choose. We notice the first flower date, cutout, and defoliation dates are also signified within the table. In the middle of the screen, we have our no production and north target. So on the x-axis, on the left-hand side, on the y-axis, on the left-hand side is no production. The y-axis on the right-hand side is north, and date degrees on the x-axis. The green line on the left-hand chart is your no production, and the grey trend line is just an average of the ambassador network. When this is released in its full version, this will actually be these trend lines for no production, north decline, and bulbs per metre plant height will actually be variety and regionally specific. And then just a little roadmap just to show how you're tracking. We'd expect no production to be online with climate. Anything seriously untoward there would be unusual. The north decline target, if you fall on the bottom side of that, no need to panic. It's just suggesting that for whatever reason, your north is falling below target, you may need to address your management. Basically, just a nice little summary on how the crop's progressing. I won't labour too much, but on the other side is the bulbs per metre in green for bulb progression, and the maroon line is your plant height. Along the top there, we can see report, data, climate summary, weather, daily information. Before I move on, we do envision this share feature. So you may be in the field, you may have finished inputting some data. You can share that with your grower or colleagues as CSD members, and they'll basically see this information within their cotton tracker as well. In terms of conversations, if you're in the field, click that off, the grower can get it, have a conversation on the way to the farm if you choose. In terms of the data, so these are the modules that we showed earlier. Basically, if you open these modules in the data tab, it'll actually give you a breakdown of the climatic summary. So here was the assessment date for foliation. It'll give us our day degrees in base 12, day degrees in 1532, and then just a breakdown of cold shocks. So obviously being foliation date, that's for the entire cropping period. If you'd open cutout, it would have given you that period from cutout to date required accordingly. So we see that certainly from our point of view, from an E&D team with our variety trial, that's very important information. And it can be a handy little discussion piece too. You can break down the data furthermore by having a climatic summary. So this is the data in vibes. This is actually the season length information. Same information across top day degrees, rain, etc., etc. These small coloured symbols, be they green or red, they will actually be indicative of the 10-year mean. So in this case here, day degrees 1532 and the 10-year mean was 1411, so indicating that in a longer term period, typically the day degrees would have been higher than what it has been for this period. I won't talk too much about the weather daily. That'll just be like an Excel there. It's just like a breakdown of the daily weather inputs, and you'll see there's a rainfall and a minimum maximum charge. It's basically just trying to aggregate some crop metrics and some weather data as well. Any questions on crop tracker?
There's one at the back.
So Chris, has that got ability to project a bit forward based on a weather forecast as to where you might be able to take a crop compared to ambassador?
This does not, but that's the sort of feedback we're looking for. Within the data, I mean, there is abilities to project forward. We don't have it here, but anyone familiar with Cod Assist and you know, the tools can be built. You're able to estimate dates and last effective flower according, you know, all those sorts of things. So the answer is no, this doesn't, but that sort of feedback's what we're looking for. That might be something we can build in.
Chris, has it got a GPS functionality? So when you
you're in the paddock, you've made some crop measurements, you can go back to that same spot next time.
It does not, but again, fantastic suggestion.
That might also link you into your nearest source of weather information automatically.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of showcasing this today, is that we're really looking for your feedback.
The next one might be geolocate based on an NDVI image that will put you in a representative spot in the field to collect your data.
And with APIs and cross collaboration these days, you know, we may be able to partner with people to be able to have that individual information overlay. I mean, basically in terms of the what if scenario, I mean, who knows? That's what we're trying to do.
Do Cotton Tracker and Barry swap their data?
Ideally, we would have a component in here that would give a barrier projection. That's just going to come down to time and complexities of getting things to talk about. It is in our long-term goal.
So if you enter data in Cotton Tracker, does that automatically, you have to enter it again in Barry?
Our ideal outcome would be once this is populated in Cotton Tracker, you have a barrier estimate based on that day's observations would give that estimate on that point in time. So you only enter it in Cotton Tracker.
So could you put bug data on that too?
Really, so Hugh asked the question of whether we can put insect observations in here. We hope that would come from today. I guess what we want from the CCA, if you saw value in putting insect information in here, how would you want it to look? So, yes.
It would be very interesting to see the distribution of the pests across the season, what the seasonal incidence is, what the length of outbreaks, whether you've got discrete outbreaks or rolling populations. Because that has a big influence on the likely damage, timing, sprays, etc.
Spot on. And in retrospect, it'd be a fantastic. And I really must point out too, but basically, once you've created this tracker, that's your tracker. It's, you know, that data is combined within there. We would obviously need to look at how we can maybe look at interlaying or overlaying information that you've mentioned there, Hugh. But yeah, it'd be good to see.
And it would be, yeah, fascinating, and it'd be very useful ammunition to go for extra funding.
Well, that's been some good positive feedback. By all means, if you like what you see or don't like what you see, please tell us. We're trying to build this tool for industry, and we hope there's some very good promise, particularly by linking in the barrier and these other things suggested today. By all means, but I'm nearly finished up, so I'll move on. I did want to just point out from a housekeeping point of view, for want of a better word, any seed bags this year from early water 2 onwards will actually contain a QR code. So just open the camera up with your phone, wave it over the bag, and you'll get a statement of seed analysis, assuming you've got an internet connection. So all that information will be there, your OZLOT, your treatment, take a screenshot, do whatever you need to do, the information will be there. See, most people will be certainly keen to look at the germination information. I will flag, while I've got a captive audience, there will be some OZLOTs this year, and we are communicating it to industry and particularly to those growers who may. We have an internal mechanism that if we see mechanical damage go over 12%, we start to talk about and notify industry of that case. So mechanical damage from a CSD QA point of view, it is measured anything from a pinprick to a scratch to a chipped seed coat. So yeah, we'll be communicating with industry if anyone's over 12%. Effectively, what we're suggesting is certainly the germination information that's been provided for these seed lots is spot on. There is no problem with germ. Got some good information on the website in terms of some work that's been done with this. We've been running these higher seed mechanical damage lots through some different planting equipment, and short of just being a little bit more on top of planter hygiene, keeping the seed plates clean, you know, there's been no issue at all. And certainly the germs are really will reiterate the germs are spot on. So just keep an eye on them. But we are flagging there will be some OZLOTs that will have a higher than 12% mechanical damage. By all means, any issues or concerns, give any of the EMD team a tingle, and we'll follow that up. Online tools, I won't labour on any of this. I just did want to say that there is a stack of tools. If you haven't checked them out online for a period of time, please take a look. They are quite handy. You do need to be a CSE member since back in July 1 to access those, but by all means, please take a look. They are optimised for mobile devices too, so whatever device you're on, feel free to take a look at that. 2 more slides. I did want to just touch on the fact of the soil temperature network. This is an example from Vermont this morning. So the actual field itself will be less relevant to people, but will give you an indication of what is happening on the soil temp within an area or local area to yourself. This indicated this morning that we did actually break that 14 degrees for the first time for soil temperature. But what I really wanted to talk about was, even though this is more paddock specific, this planting forecast is actually drawing on a 7-day forecast outlook for the local area. So that's coming through Oz Forecast, and it's giving, we've got some really nice maximum temperatures, and although it'd be a bit too early for anyone in our part of the world to be contemplating planting, but those maximums look pretty good, but when you actually calculate out the day degrees, we're still pretty skinny on the short side of considering planting. If you did, want to consider some other things. So I just really wanted to point out that planting forecast does exist and can be pretty handy to keep an eye on. Day degree calculator, I won't talk too much about it, but it has been updated and improved. We did have some feedback from some agronomists that every time you ran a calculation, you had to go back out, re-enter your site and dates. We've improved this functionality now that once you've actually selected a day degree location, so say St George, once you're in there, you can actually add dates and end dates within that. So you can actually, don't have to keep reselecting your silo site. And really that's a wrap up for me. I did want to just point out that the Fast Start COP accreditation course is live and online, and that can also contribute to the CCA accreditation program too. So I'll need to check it out. So I don't know if Ops joined us from the cloud, but that's all I have to say. So thank you.